You're listening to the Live Out Loud podcast with River Wynn and Michele Flamer.
Hi, River.
Good morning, Michele.
It's Saturday.
And I have coffee.
I know. I saw that and I'm a little jealous, but all good. Oh, Cooper's came over when he heard coffee because he's my little coffee puppy.
We have all the pets here today because I have Mr. Whiskers, my cat, who is currently nudging me to pet him. And you have Cooper. And our guest has a cat with her too.
I know. I'm so excited. I've been wanting this to happen for a couple of months now. And Kendra Cardoza is here with us. Yay! Hi, Kendra.
Hello. How are you guys?
Hello.
Good. How are
Good.
you?
I'm doing good. It's sunny this morning. It was kind of dreary yesterday, so I'm loving the sunshine.
And I know, Kendra loves all the moon cycles and all the things like us. So we've been feeling all of it coming through this last couple of days.
This full moon this week, that was a doozy.
So Kendra, I think our people, I'm so excited to have our listeners get to know you. And I can't wait till they start following you because you are one of the most beautiful spirits. And I'm just so excited to share you with everybody. So, because we've known each other for 9 years now, and we met at a trade show for Expo West, which is a natural products expo. And you were there, you've kind of been like an ambassador for lots of different food brands and all sorts of stuff. So tell the people in your own words a little bit about you and how that started for you. And, we'll just learn a little bit more of your journey today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I know I feel like I don't know, I'm kind of pinching myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's really here. It's happening.
I
I love
know.
both of you guys, and I've been binging the podcast. So yeah, I'm really excited.
I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, not sorry.
No, I'm loving all of the guests. So thank you so much. I feel honored to be here with both of you. Yeah, so I grew up in California pretty much my whole life. I grew up in Southern California, then my family moved to Northern California when I was about 8 years old. I was always a really shy child. But I think I was just protecting myself. I was highly empathic and sensitive, and it's kind of like my way to hide the true, authentic part of me. It felt safe. But I was a very creative child, and I had a lot of energy. When I would come home, my mom would be oh, great, here, the floodgates are coming open, because I would hold it in all day, and then I would come home and just let it all out. It's kind of like the podcast, right? Live out loud. It's let it all out.
Right.
That was kind of that was my life for a very long time. And so, I had this creative energy that was always present in my life. I was always doing something with creativity. So that spilled over into my adult life. And I got really into food photography, or just photography in general, and food came up next in my life. It was this creative outlet where I could really speak my truth through the lens, and I didn't have to really talk to anybody. It was this job where I eventually got into food blogging. So it was this job where I could be creative, but I didn't have to be in front of the public a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what really drew me to that part of my life. And that's kind of where we met.
Mm-hmm.
So there's other stuff that happened
paparazzi
in between there. Yes. So I had some health struggles in between that. And that's what led me to paleo, which is not the answer, which I thought was the answer back then. But I think it was just leading me down this path that we're going to get to eventually. It was this opening. It was my spiritual awakening. It was part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I got really religious, if we want to call it about that. It was a cult kind of mentality for me. And I grew up in Mormonism.
I'm no longer a part of that. But, so there was like all these pieces that I can see that, that are all coming together now. So it was like paleo became like my religion, and it was like my thing that I just was like hyper fixated on, my creative outlet. I was also, going through a really hard time in my marriage. And that was like a way for me to focus my energy elsewhere, which I think we do a lot of that, I think. So as women, we try to push through and find other outlets to make us happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got really deep into my creative side. I started, getting noticed by companies and just different entities.
Well, you're also just a beautiful storyteller. I mean, I used to just love, like all your posts and stuff, but there was always such lovely meaning behind the post. It wasn't just a food post, like, hey, this is good for you. This is what's happening. Let me, like, these are the brands that I used for, this post, blah, 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 the picture. You were always really storytelling. And I think you're still doing that. And that's why I think people like naturally gravitate towards you, because they're sort of in their feels when they're reading things, like it's just all making sense, like, oh, it's not just a regular post, like you're a beautiful storyteller.
I really appreciate that, because that is true. Yeah, I was storytelling at the same time, visually and through the words that I was writing. But yeah, I fell down that rabbit hole for a very long time. And I had some health struggles. I was struggling with something called endometriosis, which was what actually led me to paleo and actually creating all of these dishes, and then finding that creative outlet where it was really fun to just style the food too. I was like, let's make it beautiful, because a lot of stuff just is kind of like, ugh, like this is
paleo's not a lot of color, right?
It's not a lot of color.
Pretty bland sometimes.
Yeah, let's make it fun here. So, and I think you can apply that to anything in life. It's like, what can you do with the situation in your life, and how can you make it more colorful and more fun and more vibrant? How can you find the bliss in that part of your life? And I think that's really what's becoming more present in my life these days. Like that's my thing for this year, is like, find your bliss. So that was my whole thing back then. It was like, that was my bliss. I was trying to push that out through the screen, through my voice, of like, just find what makes you happy and find your bliss. But I was also struggling in the background with other things, as we do as women, trying to make it look like everything's okay.
And River, like I was like buddies with her for like a couple of years before I even realized she was married. Like I was like,
oh wow,
yeah, like, oh, she never really, you never spoke about it, Kendra. Like it wasn't really until he had his stroke, like it sort of then became a part of that, your journey. It kind of, you could see the shift. And it was really fascinating because, did you notice that too? Like you didn't put a lot out. You weren't very you didn't share a lot with everybody about your personal life. And that's totally fine. I didn't know. Like I didn't even know to ask you, like, are you even married? It was so funny.
I know. I think I mentioned it a few times, like very briefly, like on the blog, like my about section just kind of went over a little bit about it, because he had a stroke by that point. And
how old was he when he had
that? He was 29.
I mean, 29, River.
Yeah. So we got married young too. I was 26 and he was 28. So like a year after we got married, it all happened. So we were introduced to the real world pretty quickly. But, I look back and I see everything for what it is, like how it brought me to the person that I am today. It's like, I know I chose that, because I'm like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then I learned this, and I grew from this. And so
you know, no matter what happens in our life, we can always use it and alchemize it. I love that word when people say, how can you alchemize this for your highest and best good? Because you can get all of this stuff coming at you and you can just feel overloaded by it, or you can use it to your benefit and you can go, oh, how can I repurpose this? How can I alchemize this? And I just love that, because that was what I was doing without really knowing it, I guess, back then. But the stroke, I was really with him, I was trying to be very, I was worried about putting too much out there and making him feel uncomfortable. So I would ask him before I would, like, if can I say this or that? I felt very like I was walking on eggshells. Like I didn't want to say too much. And eventually he became comfortable enough where he was talking about it online. So then it was like free reign.
That's when I started. That's when I started to follow him, and like he and I would actually have a little exchange. He realized, because I was cheering you both on, through that process, and just holding space for the fact that that just must have been. I mean, you guys were so young to go through such heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, he had gone through some stuff before I had met him. I had gone through a domestic violence relationship prior to him, and he had just gone through his first brain surgery and was recovering from that when we met. And he was actually doing really well when I met him. I couldn't even tell that anything had ever occurred in his life that was that traumatic. So it was almost like we trauma bonded pretty quickly, like through our experience. It was this deep, like, I felt a deep soul connection. Like I feel like I know you from somewhere. I feel like I already know you. There was like something about that where we were already, it's like we had a soul contract, right? It was like, oh, and that was the meeting point. And
That's
then
right.
we went from there. And so yeah. So he had a brain tumor before I met him. And during one of the surgeries, his second one, that's when the stroke occurred. So it was actually an accidental stroke. The surgeon messed up when he was in there. It was an 80-year-old surgeon that needed to retire. He was really good at what he did, but he was getting to that point where he was just at the end of his career, and he came out and he apologized to the whole family, and it was just like he admitted to it and was like, towards the end of the surgery, I nicked a blood vessel and it caused the stroke, and told us everything he was going to do to make sure that everything was okay. But of course, as the family, we're just like, what? Like totally stupefied, and it changed the trajectory of all of our lives. So, yeah.
Are you guys, do you guys talk still, like pretty much every day? You guys are pretty close still.
No, we haven't spoken I mean, we've sent a few messages just briefly.
Yeah.
We're separated right now, and he's going through his own journey of coming back to himself. And it's been about 4 months since we've been separated. And so he's respecting my space and I'm respecting his space. And it feels amicable on both of our ends. There's never been any malice towards each other, even though we know where it's heading. I still love him and his family, and I appreciate everything that they gave us and through the journey. But it came to a point when I was just, I couldn't give him what he needed as far as the caregiving aspect. And so that's what's being worked out right now for him. So I wish him the best. I think he's an amazing human being. I came to a point in the journey where I had to honor myself too, and wake up from almost like a dream of like I'm not living authentically to who I truly am. And it started to just unfold, and then eventually it was like, oh, I've been denying myself of like all of these things because as a society, and we were talking about this even before the episode, River was talking about how women really take on the role of caregiver, and it's like not just the children, it's the spouse, and maybe like an elderly parent, or like all of this like gets compounded, and we really bury burden, or we carry the burden of that on our shoulders as women. And so I think it's really important to recognize that and to speak out about it, because a lot of women are struggling behind the scenes. Yeah, and we just need more awareness around it, more community, more, just less shame for the women that decide that they don't want to take on all of that responsibility. And
River, what's the term when these women, like all these overworked women, like there's a term rolling around. I cannot remember it though.
Married single mothers.
Yeah, like
and it was just, like I was just thinking as Kendra was speaking about this, one of the most common things that you will hear women say who are coming out of separations, coming out of divorces, whether it's amicable, whether it's toxic, no matter what the situation is, one of the number one things you will hear women say is, I am remembering who I am. I am finding myself. And it has nothing to do with like, well, it has everything to do with like the situation, but like they are discovering and remembering who they were before they became the caretakers and the caregivers. And that role sometimes is just so consuming that it really does disconnect women from who they are, their authentic selves, and living that.
It's actually called caregiver burnout. I mean, it's like super simple.
Okay.
It makes perfect sense. And that's why I was on the tip of my tongue. And so I had, me, I always have to go look it up because it'll drive me crazy if I don't. But yeah, I think being a mom in general, whether it's heteronormative, whether it's same sex, whether it's like you said, grandparent or whatnot, or a spouse, and even the sibling can be caregiver burnout for kids, like with kids, when their siblings are born with defects, or I've been watching.
Or I was the oldest of six. I'm the oldest of six kids, and I was the default babysitter and nanny and caregiver for the home while my parents were checked out. And so, like, that is such a huge burnout. There are so many ways that women from a young age are pushed into this role of taking care of other people first and not taking care of themselves.
And what's crazy is all this shit comes from when like families had to be like they were living in huts together, and like people had their own little jobs, and the women took care of and nurtured the family while the men went out and hunted, right? Like it stems from so much of that time. Why are you laughing?
Did you say, well, the hot men went out and hunted?
No, I said, and all the men, not all the.
Oh my gosh, I thought you said all the hot men went out and
all
hunted.
those hot cavemen that I can't wait to get up on. No.
What about the not hot cavemen? What did they do?
No, all the men went out to hunt.
Okay, humor break.
No, of course. I love our humor breaks. But no, I mean, it literally is ancestral, like years, thousands of years. And now all of a sudden, the world is like, we're fluid. Like, we're not just lesbian and gay boys anymore. Like, there's bisexuality, not just bisexuality. Now there's pansexual. Now there's like women can work, women can be a mom, work, and then husbands can be stay-at-home dads. Like, I love the fact that it's like all crumbling around us, but I think it's confusing to the older generation right now. They don't understand that we don't want a 9 to 5 job anymore. Like, we have that capability of living within our purpose. And funny enough, when we live within our authentic self and our purpose, it actually creates abundance within that. Like, Kendra's creating a beautiful retreat, and I'm like living for all these Victorian home posts right now. And we can talk about that. But don't you think, Kendra, like it's like you can actually make a living within your passion like you used to with the photography, and now it's just through your spiritual journey. It's just you've just shifted like to where you sort of want to enjoy and be.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing about life is that we can shift and we can change, and we can say, like, tomorrow I could say, well, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to, I don't know, be a donkey farmer. I mean,
Totally.
literally we can do whatever we want. And there's all of these, so like quote unquote rules that people have thrown in place, and it's not, it's just, it's fake. It's fake news. I don't know what to tell you. It's just, it's so fake. And once we start waking up to that and start exiting those old patterns and those old belief systems, that's when we truly start living from our core and the place that they've told us to disconnect from. And when we reconnect to that, then we go, oh, okay, I actually don't want to do that. I actually like have always in my heart since I was a kid wanted to do X, Y, and Z. And so once you connect back to that place, you're like, oh, so what have I been doing all these years? It's almost like you've been walking around like a zombie or like in a deep sleep. And once you come out of it,
for you now, like this transition of like separating and kind of having this awakening, what is authenticity for you? Like what is calling you authentically that you want to live? Like where are you at now?
That's a good question. For me,
her throat
I
chakra
had to clear my throat. Let me tell you, my throat has been so blocked lately.
Green and colors of the chakra.
I feel like even have a crystal here. I'm like, okay, I need to like work on my throat chakra here.
Yeah, here's the Reiki master coming out right now.
Oh, I think a lot of my youth it was ingrained in me to look a certain way, be a certain way, act a certain way. And I had this darker side to me as well. Like, yeah, I come from my heart chakra like a lot. Like I'm very heart chakra heavy, if you want to call it that. So we all have this dark side, right? If you look in your astrology, your Black Moon Lilith is kind of like that shadow side that you haven't integrated. Like, and mine is in Scorpio, and I'm like, oh God, that's the feistiest one of like shadow and darkness, and these deep kind of like hidden things that we don't talk about. And so I think when I started connecting with that, I was like, yeah, I have this other side to me, and I let that come out more, and I integrated that part of me, and I told myself it's okay to be both of these things. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to show more on my social media as well, is like, yeah, I can sit here and I can give a sound bath, and I can sing out and bring angelic frequencies, but I'm also, there's this other side to me, like, and that's okay. We can be both things,
I love those posts where like you can think one thing and still do the other, it's
like they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, you can live within these dualities of yourself. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. And I think it's like the suppression of the feminine with the sensual side of us that we've been told is dark and evil, and the succubus or whatever they want to call it, that kind of energy. And it's like, it's really this like softness about the feminine, if it's used in the right way, right? Like if we're not using it for an ill intent, to manipulate somebody or something, but if we're using that part of our sensuality to awaken this part of us, this creativity inside of us, this beautiful healing energy, like there's that as well. So, but nobody wants to talk about that part. They just want to talk about the darker side of sensuality and of those things. So yeah, I don't even know if I answered the question, but
I know. I think I was going to just say, when did you decide to go into Reiki? Sort of what drew you to Reiki and all the things?
Yeah, it was during my my food journey with I was doing a lot of recipe creation, a lot of food photography, working with brands, and I was just really like burnt out because I would stay up late to get everything done. I'd be like working on Photoshop, like
that tracks.
Yep.
Yeah. That was when I got everything done. Because Matt would be asleep and I just had free reign of like, I work best when I'm by myself, nobody's around, and I can just like focus on the task at hand. So I'd be up editing photos late into the night, editing posts, or, just all kinds of stuff that I was working on. And I I fell into ASMR, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with
Yeah,
ASMR.
no, totally.
I love ASMR.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
fascinated. I was kind of weirded out at first because everyone was just crunching on chips for a while, and then like like the trend was really weird, and I was like, I literally cannot hear all these people eating.
I will say my 9-year-old or almost 9-year-old who is autistic, she is obsessed with food ASMR and she loves
I get
food
it.
ASMR videos. She just loves it. Yep.
And now there are these weird, like, I just want to talk to you. Like all these like
Oh,
I'm
it's
almost
always
like,
been weird.
oh, it's after a gummy that I can only like tolerate some of that because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go down with this with you right now.
I love ASMR. That's what I fall asleep to ASMR.
Okay, gotcha. I just, yeah, that's funny. Okay, so keep going, Kendra. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many different parts of ASMR, like mukbang or mukbang or whatever they call it, is like the food, like crunching on. And I think it's just triggers. It's like everybody has their own trigger, right? It's just
Yeah.
like even like with massages, it's like, oh, this one part, if you massage me there, like that's it. Like
Yep.
I'm in it to win it. So I can't remember how I actually fell into it, but I found some videos on YouTube, and this was probably like 2015.
Mhm.
Yeah, 2015. And it was kind of like taboo back then. No one was talking about it. And like,
Mhm.
I think one person mentioned it, and then I looked it up, went down the rabbit hole, found some videos on YouTube, and then here I am. And I'm like, this is awkward. Like, what is this? This is weird, but I was triggered by
Can
it.
you tell people what Reiki is and like, yeah, what it's all about? Because there might be people who have never heard about it.
Yeah, Reiki is just working with energy. Honestly, you're just working with like source energy, and you're using your hands to bring that energy down from source and to use that for healing purposes on individuals. So it's a healing practice. You don't have to be, there's no like race or religion that, can't be a part of um, uh, practicing Reiki. So I think that's what's beautiful about it. There's a lot of gatekeeping within certain religions with like the laying on of hands or whatever you want to call it. I think it's just a very like similar energy. It's like this energy that we're bringing in from source, and we're using it for the highest and best good of the client or the person that's coming to you wanting Reiki. And so I think that's what ASMR was it was kind of like my gateway into that kind of energy, because I was still struggling with like my religion at that point. But what they were telling me was like the spirit, we'll call it, or like the good feeling of God coming through my body would only be experienced through certain circumstances. Like if you were doing other things, like you would not feel that. But here I am in front of this YouTube video, and somebody's like
Oh yeah.
tapping on the microphone, and I'm like
Yeah.
whispering, and here I am having this like full on, feels like a spiritual experience. Like my whole body is tingling and this
Mm.
relaxation. And I needed that because I was going through such crazy stuff during that time. It was like having a glass of wine, right? It was like this relaxing time where it's like, there's no substances. And here I am relaxing into this moment, and I'm feeling spiritual, which is kind of strange because somebody's like whispering and it feels a little bit like sensual at the same time, because you're like, wait, what are they doing to me? Are they doing some kind of like black magic on me? Like
Right.
it didn't make
Mm-hmm.
sense at first,
Yeah.
but it's related to, I think it's all related to like the chakra system and the nervous system, and our life force energy. And
So do
so
you get
that,
so both of you, do you guys feel like, because it doesn't resonate for me in the same way. Do you think it's because like I'm balanced in a way that I don't actually need that? Or is it like do people find their way to it and enjoy it because there's something like that needs to get filled? Like I have to understand this because I haven't asked
Reiki or ASMR? Which
ASMR, the ASMR
ASMR?
piece of it.
yeah, I think everyone can be affected by it, because ASMR stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, and it happens in the brain.
Mhm.
And so it's like something will trigger that response within your body, and then you'll get those relaxing kind of feelings somewhere in your body. It could, I mean, everybody's so different, right? Their body and their chemistry. But I think it just depends on, like, you might just eventually stumble upon something that triggers that, and go, oh, that's my trigger. It may not be the person chomping on chips or the person whispering or tapping or doing whatever. But there's also visual ASMR, which is like, I could be doing this with my hands, which I do with my Reiki videos.
Which,
and
you
some
know,
people
I love.
find
And
that.
when you do your little wave, it's the cutest. I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready for that.
So maybe that's your trigger. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think so.
And I will say too, my experience has been like, as a mom of neurodivergent child and having being neurodivergent myself, and then like having a large circle of neurodivergent friends, is that ASMR also seems to be very relaxing for people who are neurodivergent, because our nervous systems are just on overload from how much we're working during the day to like fit in, assimilate all of that, and our brains just operate so differently that it's like, I know for my daughter, like she'll come home and she'll start immediately watching ASMR videos, and it really just calms her entire nervous system down and helps her regulate. And so I think maybe different, like people who are neurotypical, neurodivergent might also react to it differently in different capacities.
That's fascinating. So that was part of this whole, and then you decided you wanted to become a Reiki master, right?
No, that was like years before. I mean, I'd heard of it. And I think it was when I started watching the videos that people would do Reiki videos with ASMR. I eventually stumbled upon that. And so then I was like, oh, well, why are they doing Reiki with these videos? And so then I went down the rabbit hole with that. And that's kind of like how I stumbled into that. And eventually I got my certification because it was calling so deeply, and I knew it was time. It was like they were introducing me to it. Like my spirit guides were like,
Well, I
this
think
is going to be a part of your
no,
journey.
totally. But I think this is the beautiful part of your journey. And what I really wanted to share is that spiritual awakening doesn't happen overnight. It's the lever of going, wait, I want to understand where I belong in the universe. It's all the why, like all the questioning starts to come through. And then, like you said, we go down our own rabbit holes based on whether we decide that we're figuring out like what kind of clairvoyant we are and what resonates for us, and how we learn things, or what feels good on the journey. And I think we just keep sort of layering on to the spiritual awakening. But I think a lot of people feel like all of a sudden we're just spiritual, everything, give me all the it's not at all. It's like I started to finally add stones in, and I've started to like, and I think just it's like it's like you layer things in. River, what would you say about all that? Like the awakening?
Yeah, I know that for me, like my spiritual journey has very much been about shedding just as much as I'm bringing in. And so sometimes, like you said, like overnight doesn't happen because I don't have that capacity overnight. My system is not open and prepared for that. So it's like the more I shed, the more I learn. And it's a continuous process. Like you don't ever get to this point where you just arrive. I'm here. I know all the things. I'm highly spiritual. It's a continuous process of like ebb and flow, shedding and learning.
Yeah. Because I find like when we talk to our friends who are spiritual practitioners, for them too, they saw moments in their childhood, like when Angela tells her story of like she could kind of talk to people on the other side, or things were like showing up for her, but it's like those evolutions. Bailey will tell you the same type of stuff, but like any spiritual practitioner will say, there were signs. It's just where you are within sometimes age, sometimes journey. But like even Tyler Henry, who's a super popular medium, right? Like he and his mom will tell you stories like on social media about like when he was little, and how, he just saw he literally could talk to dead people and stuff. And so it's just fascinating. And then he didn't want to do that for years and years. And then he was like, I can't look away any longer. I think the spiritual awakening is when you get to that place of, oh, I can't look away any longer. Like it's just too loud otherwise. And once you lean into it, then you find it sort of like maps out for yourself. Like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to understand and love and enjoy and learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think even when you were saying that, I was thinking about when I was a child, and I would see at night in my bed when all the lights were off, I would see these like orbs that would like almost like colorful rainbow orbs. And I remember touching them like as a kid, like, what's this? And I would put my hand up. And I remembered that later on, I was like, it was significant enough to know that I was connecting as a child. And I don't remember everything, but I know that I was connecting with spirit. And I know that I don't know if that was like my spirit guides or if it was just like me connecting to the energy that was all around us. But I feel like that's kind of merging back in my childhood, because I'm starting to see certain things, certain energies within my physical reality again. And I'm like, oh, it's like that part of me that I've forgotten or I shut off, and it's coming back in again. So I think it's interesting. Right. And like what River was saying, it's like once we clear out things, it's like we make space. And I think we were talking about this too, Michele, on the conversation. It's like you have to clear out the old, right? You have to dust everything out, clear out the closets, get everything out, because then it's like the energy of like, I'm welcoming in new stuff, new energy. I'm calling in what now is my purpose moving forward. So, but it's like we have to clean it out first to show the universe that we're ready to receive more.
That is so true.
Yeah, the spiritual journey, I think, is not about learning more. It's about remembering and unlearning all the things that are blocking us from remembering who we are, because we're born with that innate knowledge. We're born with that connection to spirit. And along the way, we just have so much conditioning and stuff in our environment that helps us that forces us to forget who we are. And so the spiritual journey is really just this process of like having something that sparks initially the process of remembering who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also, I think, a process of not only is it the term awakening, right? It's also the piece where staying open and allowing yourself to not be so wound in a way of the world, jobs, and letting all this outside energy, which can really affect a lot of decision making. I mean, getting quiet, but also walking through the world with a new kind of like a childlike awe, right? Like being open to like right now, like, you know, like in this moment, or like when I'm just out in the world or I'm driving, I'm like looking for the things that will bring joy, or an angel number will, you know, be on a building, and I'll be like, okay, I got you. You know, it's like having this beautiful unspoken conversation with your guides, the angels, and allowing just the universe to sort of go, all right, so there's a detour up ahead, and it's not coming up on my iPhone and my maps, but it's being aware of that there's a detour up there. Why do I feel like I want to go right over here? And then find out later there was a huge crash that happened minutes after you were, oh, okay. Well, it's being so sensitive and getting to that quiet internal place that when you start to enjoy being in that quiet place and that listening, right? It's like you want more of that, please, right? The Abraham Hicks, like more of that, please. And it's like you get into almost a channeled state through the day, and getting grounded in becoming more to who you are and connecting within, it becomes easier as time goes, because being out of that state doesn't feel good anymore. So you're like, oops, hold on, let me just click that again. And I want to come back to the bliss, right? You want to come back to that bliss that you were talking about, Kendra.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about how the world really disconnects us from that. It's like we're connected in from birth, right? We've got this direct connection to source. And then the world teaches us to not trust our own voice, to listen to all of these outside sources, the external things that are outside of us. And we forget that we truly are we're the ones that know the best. Like we can go to psychic mediums, we can go to healers, we can go and do all of these practices, but honestly, like you are your own guru. Like you're the one that knows the best for yourself. You can receive those downloads and those inspirations better than anybody else can for your own life. And so I think that's what I've been trying to do more recently, is really connect back to, if I want to use a tarot deck, there's no problem with that, right? Like it's fun sometimes to work with oracle cards, or whatever method that you use. And I think that it's wonderful, but I also have been challenging myself to, like, when I want to grab that, be like, okay, wait, but let me connect back to myself and let me see if I can actually just like tap in and give myself that answer, or like find it, like connect in. And so I think it's important because we've been so disconnected. There's so much chaos happening. It's like we can't think and we can't truly go within because there's so much chatter and noise all around us.
Yeah. And so many of the things like tarot and oracle decks and even going to healers and things like that, like those are tools to help us build that foundation of connecting back to self. Because like you said, like we don't need those things to like hear from self. But I have found, and I know in my journey, like those have been tools to get me back to that space.
Yeah.
I really see why people like move to Costa Rica and create like co-ops and create like, and other spiritual communities, really creating these spaces, because when I get to be around you guys, when I get to be around my spiritual family, my soul family, there's literally nothing, like everything just falls into place. It just feels as it should always be this way. And I think, like you said, especially here in America, I mean, I will say Europe gives people 6 weeks to be back, to get back in touch. Like America is just so like built on shoulders of every single American walking around. It's like, oh, there's a new little American that was born today. Good. You're going to be a good little soldier. You're going to be a good little bee worker. Like it's just so, it's such a hamster wheel. And the minute that you tell everybody, I don't want to be a part of that. Like when River said, I'm going to take some time off from from growing my business, from being in that hamster wheel. And then, more good things come to her. And it's just unbelievable when you do that. People don't know what to do with you at that time. They're kind of like, well, what are you going to do? You're like, I'm gonna just be, and it's just gonna happen. And like there's this, it's funny, it's like coming out, and you're like you're 19 like me, and I was coming out and everyone's like, so are you ever gonna be a mom? And I'm like, you don't need a man and a woman to have a kid. Like, you're just like, you're like stupid. They just don't think about it at that moment. You're like, there's adoption, there's surrogacy, like there's all these other great options out there. And then, it's like, oh, and it's the same kind of thing. It's just different conversations, and it's people getting out of their freaking ego, getting out of that head. Like there's only one way to live a life, and there's not.
Yeah, it can get kind of kooky, for sure. I know I went through that as well. Just I had a lot of struggles. Well, my health struggles were related to fertility, so that was part of the struggle. Was like, here I am, trying to help my husband come back to life and find his health again, and then we're trying to get pregnant, and so there was like so much pressure, right? It's like all this pressure that we feel even from like a young age. Like, what are you gonna, like you're saying, what are you gonna do? Where like, are you gonna go to school? Are you gonna get married? Are you gonna have kids? And it's like all the like standard kind of like things that have been placed upon us. And it's really like I just want to breathe. Like I want to enjoy the earth, like this beautiful place that we call home, that we don't get to take it all in.
No, because
Like our
we're always
ancestors
working.
did.
It's because we're always
Exactly.
working, like for real. Now,
Yeah.
the one thing that I love doing is with people who are spiritual practice, for our listeners, is can you share a little bit of your daily practice of like some things that like ground you, some of those modalities to share that resonate for you?
Yeah, I start every day with meditation. Like it's a non-negotiable. Like even before I go outside, because I have chickens and you know this, but I have chickens and they also are part of my life, my daily
They're
routine.
so
But,
cute.
but before I even do that, this is the room that I'm in here is like what I call my spiritual room. It's like a second bedroom, but all my crystals are in here. A lot of just like my spiritual stuff is in here. And so this is my happy place. Like this is where I come in and I take my sage and my Palo Santo and I do like a whole just like my ritual, right? Of just like cleansing and clearing. And so I'll go into meditation and I'll usually do some self Reiki during that time and really connect myself back into me. It's like I take that time for myself first. And that was like something I stumbled upon when I was having a hard time in my marriage. I had to take myself out and do a meditation, whether once or twice a day. Sometimes if it was a really hard day, I'd do it, in the evening as well. But yeah, I really ground myself in. I use different practices for that. I've got like these copper rods that I can use like for grounding, and they're really like if I feel like I'm floating more and I'm not really in my body, these are really helpful. And then there's also like this grounding medicine that I use, a plant medicine. It's non-psychoactive. It's basically got tobacco, which is very grounding in it, and it has ashes from trees and different herbs, and it's from the Amazon tribes that have lovingly kept this tradition of this beautiful practice that grounds us back in. So I'll use that sometimes. It's called hape, and I self-administer
She was
that.
explaining this to me, and I was like, no, thank you. But she's like, you're going to try it. I'm like, okay, I will promise
Let
I'll
me
try
see if I
it.
can find. So there's like this is my little
Oh,
hape. It's called a caripe,
wait,
and
that's
this
what we're
is
putting up our nose?
no, this is for me to do this for myself, but if I was administering to you, there's another
Oh,
way for
okay.
that. And so it's like it's ashes and the tobacco it's like the powder, and you're blowing it up the nostril, and then for like 15 to 30 minutes you have this really like coming home to yourself. You're really like in your heart, and like you come back to yourself and you're like grounded into the earth, because these are all like herbs and plants that ground you back into your experience. And so I've really found that if I am having a hard time going into meditation, I will use hape. I don't always use it, but it's a beautiful thing that we're given. That's not like it's not like having a full-on journey with medicine. It's very like quick and it's like just takes you back in.
Drops you
It
in.
yeah, it aligns the chakra system. It cleanses and clears, and it just you just have to experience it. It's just a really beautiful, beautiful practice, and I'm just so thankful to the tribes who lovingly still make this medicine and offer it to us to be able to use to bring us back to self and to remembrance of who we truly are. So this is it. This is the thing, and you can stick it. Yeah, it's not cute, but it's very effective. And
I told
I
her
hope
she can do it to me. I was like, all right, we'll try it. She's like, okay. I was like,
I
all
love
right.
it. I love it.
it's beautiful to do on your own, but I've also been in experiences with community where we've had community hape ceremonies or circles, and there's just something about that power of community that it's even more just powerful to be with other
I believe
people.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope
Would
to
you do
offer
it,
that at some
River?
point in the
What's
future.
that?
Yeah, would you do it, River?
It's so interesting because like we haven't really talked much about plant medicine before, and now I'm in this sacred spaces facilitatorship training, and that is what we're talking about is plant medicine. And I am personally looking at in this next year going on an ayahuasca retreat, and like I'm opening myself up more to some of these experiences because I know it all serves a purpose to connect you back to earth and to community and to source, and I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I mean, they do have some that are tobacco-less. They're just the plants, which is just as beautiful. If somebody doesn't want tobacco, or, has an issue with tobacco in their life. But what I love about it is like it's a non-psychoactive. It's legal, it's something that is like there's nothing like, it's not ayahuasca, it's not shrooms or whatever, but it's a beautiful vibration coming from the earth that can bring us into our bodies. And I just love that when there's things like that we can use, that are practices that we can weave into our life that are nourishing.
Before we end this, would you talk about your retreat a little bit? What's coming up, and so that we can learn more about that?
Yeah, so I've been feeling the ping since last year. Well, for a few years now. I've always wanted to do some sort of retreat, even when I was doing food, but even more so when I got into sound healing and using my voice and doing Reiki and all the things. Yeah, it's been so present in my life right now. It's like source, the guides are like, oh, I'm sorry, my phone I thought was on silent and I'm getting pings here.
You're
Let me
fine.
put it on do not disturb.
We don't hear it, by the way, so it's
Oh,
all
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So yeah, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do this, like, where are we going? What are we doing? And so the first ping that I got was to do a local retreat for my community here and people that have wanted to come and experience a sound bath and my singing as well with the sound bowls in person. If they don't live here, that they have the opportunity to come and experience a retreat. And also we'll be doing Reiki and some other spiritual practices. Like I learned how to open the Akashic records for people. And so I'd love to like be able to offer that as well during the retreat. So just a retreat back to self through sound and energy healing is really what I'm calling in. And it's this beautiful Victorian home that was built in the 1800s. It's got a lot of history here in Auburn, California, which is gold country. And it's just such a beautiful place. There's so many places that we can dip in the river for like cold plunges and go on hikes and really connect back to the earth and ourselves. And so, yeah, coming in May, the beginning of May, it's the 3rd through the 6th, there will be my first retreat here in Northern California. So
amazing.
I know. I'm so excited for her. And you've been doing other people's retreats for a while now too. So you now understand like how to put them on. Like you've seen enough now that you like know exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, even as a food blogger and in that world, I was invited to a lot of retreats. So those were very different retreats. And then a few years ago, I was invited to a spiritual retreat, which that was like my first time stepping into that. And that opened me up even more. And then I was like, ooh, I want to do this. Like, this is beautiful because it helps people really, really dive deeper into themselves and have profound experiences even after, the retreats. So yeah. Yeah, I've done a few with friends that have invited me, and I'm so grateful for those experiences because a few of them have been on boats and in a rural place in Hawaii, and I was cooking during those retreats and doing sound healing type stuff. So it's all coming together.
I love that.
I love that.
It's cool. Well, will you come back again after like we'll do this again and we'll talk about other modalities and
Yeah.
and it'll be fun to talk about your retreat after the fact. So, because I'm sure it's going to be fantastic, but just appreciate you sharing space with us today and hanging out.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for letting me talk about all the things that I don't get to talk about all the time with soul family.
I know.
I love it. It's so beautiful to hear more about your journey and get to know you more. I love it.
I know. I love meeting you, River. Okay, we're besties now.
Yay!
Yes.
See, I love that.
And actually, as we were sharing about your earlier journey, I'm like, we have a lot of parallels in our lives.
You guys do. That's why I'm so excited.
Religion and all. I'm like, oh, we're gonna have to chat soon.
I know the green is connecting us. See, like it's like
yes, yes,
connecting us
in. You guys are the cutest. Okay, well, I love and adore you both.
Love you, friends.
Love you guys. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to subscribe and share because what do we say, baby?
Sharing is caring.